Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks to all the elected officials, the party officials, and everyone who's here today. This is a great crowd, so appreciate you all showing up. Yeah, just a little background on me. My name's Glenn Jacobs. I'm currently mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Before that, I was with World Wrestling Entertainment. I had a very long career there. I was very fortunate and blessed to spend 30 years entertaining people all around the world and working with some of the greatest performers on the planet. As my wrestling career was winding down, I wanted to do something else. I was always interested in politics and government, mainly because I want to keep politicians off my back. So, and I always tell people one of my jobs as county mayor is actually to keep government out of the way, to keep government from doing things that it shouldn't be doing. So in 2018, I ran for Knox County Mayor, and I won. I won my Republican primary by 23 votes out of 42,000 people. So when you're talking about every vote counting, I am living proof of that. But since then, Knox County, just like all of Tennessee, we're in a great place because we do have the philosophy of putting freedom and markets first and putting people first. And that's paid off for us as we're seeing it pay off across the state. So I'm very active on social media, and recently I launched a contest. It's an ugly Christmas sweater contest. When I launched that contest, I never realized I would come to Sumner County and find out. But I'm glad that I did that as well. How many of you all are grandparents in here? Me too. Grandkids are awesome, right? They're great. No offense to you kids, but if I could have skipped the kids and gotten straight to the grandkids, I would. I have two grandkids. They're actually my daughters are my stepdaughters, and really proud of them. One is a nurse practitioner. They're both nurses. One is a nurse practitioner. The other one runs the administration for a home health service in Sevier County. And I have two grandkids. I have a 12-year-old. I'm sorry. Something actually just happened 2 days ago, which I'm really not happy about. My 12-year-old granddaughter, straight A student, best friends with my wife, most precious little girl in the world, she turned 13. So we hope to get her back here in about 7 years. I also have her name is Madison. I have a 5-year-old grandson named Cooper, and he's 5, so I guess we have, by the time Madison turns 20, Cooper will be entering those teenage years. So we can hang out with Cooper until she comes back to us. But Cooper's a wild man. He's into just everything. But grandkids are awesome. And of course, being the Christmas season, I'm thinking about what I should get him this year. Now, I don't know about you all, but I have a tendency to contemplate gifts that, let's say on Christmas Day, you know, grandkids' eyes don't necessarily light up, okay? And then we get them toys and stuff like that. But, you know, one year I was like, you know what we should get them this year? Is we should, Madison's like 1 year old, I should get her some silver rounds and explain that this is a hedge against currency debasement and inflation. Wife didn't think that was a great idea. Another time I was going to get him pocket constitutions. Well, Cooper couldn't read, so despite the fact that it had historical notes, which I was really excited about, again, Crystal shut that one down. Then there was the year we were going to give them DVDs with their favorite TV shows and cartoons, and I tried to slide in Ronald Reagan's greatest speeches. Again, didn't really go over with the wife very well. This year I've got it though, okay? This year I want to give them congressional term limits. Because I think that we can do anything to make our children's future brighter. It is to limit how long people can serve in Congress. When the founding fathers created this country, I don't think that any of them envisioned a political class where people would go to Washington, D.C. and stay there for decades, but that certainly is what we have now. That is the antithesis of servant leadership. When George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were president, you will see that they actually sacrificed in their personal life. And when they went back to Mount Vernon and Monticello, their estates were in disarray and they had to spend the rest of their lives actually picking up pieces because of their service to the country. Contrast that to what happens now, where people go to Congress and they're for 20 or 30 years, and somehow they go in with a net worth of a couple $100,000, making $170,000 a year, and they get out with a net worth of $10 million. It's not quite possible, but it happens. I think term limits could help eliminate that. We all know that Congress isn't going to do it themselves, right? I mean, how many of y'all think that Congress one day says, hey, term limits are a great idea, I'll only stay here for however many years, okay? Actually, my congressman, Tim Burgess, who's also my predecessor as county mayor, he did propose some legislation the other day that would term limit new people coming into Congress, okay? So if you're existing, it doesn't apply to you, your grandfather did, but if you're new, you are term limited. In Tim's case, he wants to make it 3 terms for a congressperson and 2 terms for a senator. You guys think that's going to go anywhere? No, absolutely not. But there's another way to do it. Article 5 of the Constitution allows the Constitution to be amended in 2 ways. One is a 2/3 votes of both houses of Congress on a constitutional amendment, and then that goes to the states, and if 3/4 of the states ratify that proposed amendment, it becomes part of the Constitution. It passes or ratifies, becomes part of the Constitution. The other way is for the states to follow the same process. And 2/3 of the states call a convention of the states to discuss a proposed amendment. Same deal. If it passes that convention of the states, it goes back to the state legislatures, and if 3/4 of the state legislators pass it, ratify that amendment, it becomes part of the Constitution. The second way has never ever happened in American history. There has never been a convention of the states. We have 27 amendments in the Constitution, and all of them have been proposed by Congress and then have gone back to the states for ratification and been ratified and become part of the Constitution that way. Organization that I am the chairperson for here in Tennessee is called U.S. Term Limits, and the goal of U.S. Term Limits is a convention of the states to discuss a single issue of term limits. There are currently 4 states that have signed on to this: Missouri, Alabama, West Virginia, and Florida. We're trying to make Tennessee the 5th state. Last year took a huge step in that direction when House Joint Resolution 8 passed the House, adding Tennessee to the other states calling for a convention of the states. I'd like to thank Representative Garrett for his work on that. He not only voted...
As I'm taking a picture of the group, I'm
not
not turning my back on you, Mayor, I promise.
That's right. But it's also signed a pledge to support that going forward. What we need is for this year, it has to pass the Senate. And if it passes the Senate, Tennessee will become the 5th state to call for a convention of the states to discuss term limits. Need 29 more states, need 34 states in order for that to happen. And then when it passes that convention, goes back to the states, 38 states vote in favor, and it's ratified. One thing that the Republican Party proper can do is U.S. Term Limits has a resolution. There's papers on your table of a model resolution, basically where the party would call for support or express their support for this piece of legislation. The interesting thing is, in an era when the country's so divided, now I'd argue they're divided, liberals are wrong. But nevertheless, about 80% of everybody, Republicans and Democrats, support term limits. So this is actually an equal. I would just ask you all, please reach out to your senators and express that you would like to see them vote in favor of House Joint Resolution 8, calling for a convention of the states to discuss a congressional term limit. So again, thank you all very much for having me here today. Merry Christmas to everybody, and let's give our grandchildren a great Christmas present.
Would it apply to current members of Congress, or are they grandfathered in
Sure,
the new ones?
sure. That's a great question. The question is, if this is passed, would it apply to current members, or would they be grandfathered in, like Representative Burchett's proposal? The whole idea that this resolution and like House Resolution 8, all it says is calling for a convention of the states to discuss congressional term limits. And at that convention is where those things would be worked out. Like people ask me, well, you know, what specifically would it call for? I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, you know, would you have like 6 terms as a congressman, which would be 12 years, and then 2 terms as a senator? It applies to everyone. I mean, that's kind of what I see, just Glenn's opinion. But Glenn's opinion doesn't matter because it would be the people at the convention determining that back to the states. So this is just calling for that state convention of the states. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
If we had a convention of the states, could somebody come in and hijack it?
Sure.
To bring in all these other issues and,
Sure.
and because, how do you,
Sure.
that seems to me, that's where I kind of back off.
Sure, and that's another question, a great question to get a lot. You know, could this convention turn into a runaway convention? Could it be hijacked to do all sorts of other stuff? No, because the legislation specifically addresses one issue. And it's actually under penalty of law. The delegates that are at the convention, if they start going into other stuff, they could be recalled and face criminal penalties. So it's different than a constitutional convention. And a constitutional convention would be wide open. You know, this is actually, we're talking about congressional term limits. It's just like when, you know, just like when y'all have a county commission meeting and you have the agenda, that's the agenda. And when people start deviating from the agenda, you know, that's not kosher. In this case, it's actually criminal. So no, that couldn't happen. And I would also remind folks that no matter what, it still has to go back to the states. And also, that happens every day in Congress. Because, you know, 2/3 of the Congress, the houses could decide on something and shoot it back to the states. So, but in this case, it's actually probably more protected from that happening than if a constitutional amendment was proposed by Congress. It's a great question. Yes?
What's the plan, if Tennessee goes into the convention of states? What's the plan for, reaching a better mass of other states? You know, perhaps like-minded states, maybe
Sure.
Oklahoma, Texas, maybe, you know, those type of states. What kind of a plan, that might be enacted for them?
Well, that's actually where an organization like U.S. Term Limits comes into play, because they're all across, they're a nationwide organization, and they're pushing that. And I'm sure too that as more states, I think it'll build more momentum, as more states see other states getting on board, they would be more amenable to this. And I also think this, again, this is my opinion, but at some point when Congress looks and says, oh gosh, you know, 15, now 20 states have joined this, we need to just do it ourselves, which is the same outcome. So, you know, who cares whether it ends up in the convention of the states, whether Congress has an amendment which is acceptable to everybody. The more momentum that we can build, the more that we can bring awareness and make this issue top of mind with everybody, the better. Yes, ma'am.
Just a compliment, if you will. I follow you on Twitter, and I'm regularly encouraged by what you're doing, what's happening on that side of the state. And Tim Burchett, and I want to just encourage you in that. Thank you. It's good to know that we have a deeper bench than I realize sometimes.
Thank you.
So, keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Here, here.
Aaron Duquette from U.S. Term Limits is here. Aaron has more information. You can sign a petition as well and do it all right here. So thank you all very much. Have a great Christmas holiday.